I'm going to record.
Oh, baby. Okay. Let me give it a
Just want to let everybody know that we're recording.
Thank you, Barry.
Okay, are we ready? Okay, it being 7:04 on January 27th, 2021, notice having been duly given. A motion is in order to open the meeting.
So made.
second.
Moved and seconded. I'm calling the board. Dwight McCarron is not here yet, but he says he's coming. Janice is not here yet. Mark Semanian.
Yes.
Is Olabunna here? No. Barry Crimmins? No. John Linehan?
Yes.
Laurice Rubel?
Yes.
Joe Scardino?
Yes.
And John Morton votes yes. So the meeting is now open. I will say that this meeting is being taped by the Stoughton Media Association, and we will be maybe making our own tape as well. And so people on this meeting, both on the commission and guests, will understand that the meeting is being taped, and it will be in the future televised, but it's not being televised live. All right, that having been said, the chairman's report. We have a long agenda today. I don't have much to report. In fact, I have nothing to report, so we'll go right to the administrator's report. Barry.
Okay, there's a few things. I did prepare a draft town report. I know it's a little bit further down on the agenda, but as long as I'm giving the report, it's probably a good time to go over it now. I don't know if everyone on the committee has had a chance to look at it. I know that the chairman has, and he's given some feedback, and I did incorporate his suggestions into another draft and sent that around to everybody. So I'm wondering if anyone has any other feedback, and if not,
Mary, when did that go out? Because I read one draft and I'm not sure that I read the edited version. What's the date?
The second version went out, hang on a minute.
It's on your email.
On the 25th, 2 days ago.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, what is the deadline on this? Does it have to be published in the warrant?
I have to turn it in by the end of January.
By the end of January. Well, we're not going to meet again, so we should act on this tonight.
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve the annual report as indicated in the last draft sent to us by Barry?
I'm happy to make that. Is it the end of January, Barry, or is it the end of February we have to have it in?
I was told the end of January.
Okay, good to know. Then I think this is important. I'm happy to hear any discussion on it, but I'd make a motion to have the draft annual report submitted into the annual report for the 2021 town meeting.
Is there a second? John?
I was just going to say I'm fine with it.
I can't hear you.
I don't know that it requires a motion and all that. Barry's capable, especially with everybody looking over his shoulder, without making it so official, and then we can edit it right up to the last minute.
Yeah, and I would agree with John Linehan
Well,
on.
I want him to. Yeah, okay. I do want to, let's make it clear. Then the motion could be to allow Barry to file the annual report on or before the end of the month with such changes as may be suggested by members of the commission.
Sure, I'll take that.
I'll second it.
Barry, I suggest that that's probably Monday.
Any discussion on that motion?
It's probably Monday since the 31st is a Sunday.
Right. Well, the 31st.
Okay, so that'll be February. Well, he's going to have it in by the end of February.
Friday then.
At the end of January.
I think
the motion is to. The motion is to allow Barry to file the annual report, of which we've all seen a draft, with such additional changes, if any, as members of the commission may suggest. That's the motion. Is it seconded?
It was seconded. I
It's
seconded it.
seconded. I'm polling the, is there are any member of the public wish to be heard? Hearing nothing. I'm polling the board on the motion. Dwight McCarron, is he here yet? No. Janice is not here. Mark Zemanian.
Yes.
Olabumney is not here yet. Okay. Barry Crimmins is not here yet. John Linehan.
Yes.
Maurice
Yes.
Lubell. Joe
Yes.
Scardino.
Yes.
John.
Hello?
And John Morton votes yes. Who just joined the meeting?
Dwight.
Oh, Dwight, do you
Okay.
vote? Oh, well, the discussion is, and that vote was to allow Barry to file on behalf of the commission, the CPC annual report with such changes.
I vote yes.
Okay. But to finish, with such changes as members of the commission may suggest between now and the filing date, and the filing date is supposed to be the end of January, which is a Sunday, so it will probably be
But I will
on
be
the
filing on
Friday.
Friday, so to make sure that I make that deadline.
I agree, Barry. You should have it done by Friday, yes. Just to be safe, you know?
A point of order, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make a correction.
Yes.
You're not at the Conservation Commission, you're at the CPC. We are a committee and not a commission.
Yeah, you're right. It's the committee. You got me. Okay, so that's what happened. And Dwight, you just voted yes also?
Yes.
Okay. Anything more in your report, Barry Kassler?
No, that's it for now.
Okay. Then the next item on the agenda is supplemental funding request for COVID Emergency Housing Assistance Fund.
Mr. Chair, if I could just interrupt you briefly, I know that Deborah Roberts is here with us tonight, and Deborah was appointed as our liaison by the select board. And I just thought, if possible, we could give her a minute or two to say hello to the rest of the board members that may not be familiar with her. Maybe a brief, how'd you get here kind of thing would be nice for the committee and the public to hear.
I agree, and I apologize for not thinking of that myself. Please, Roberta, say hello to us all and tell us what the mission is.
Hi, my name is Deborah Roberts, and
Lovely.
I've attended a couple of your meetings before, and periodically I'm a check in to see if there's anything that you need from the Board of Selectmen to be on the agenda or anything like that. So I was designated as the liaison, and tonight I'm just checking in, but also I wanted to hear your conversation about the West Street properties, because last night we did, at the Board of Selectmen, we did talk about that. But I wanted to hear from your perspective what you thought. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to say hi to everyone.
Hi. Welcome.
Hi, Deborah.
All right, well,
Thank you.
Hello.
thank you for doing that. And by the way, I think it's very important that the Board of Selectmen be aware of what we're doing and be kept informed. So I'm delighted you're here. That having been said, we're going to finish this one, which is the housing fund, and then in deference to Deborah, we will take up the 5-acre project, which is later on the agenda, if there are no objections. That having been said, Mark, you may be the best person here to talk on the housing fund.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have a brief narrative. Last year, the Select Board applied for and the CPC recommended favorably on an emergency assistance program for Stoughton residents facing financial hardships due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The CPC and the town generously approved the request for $510,000 to fund this program. This program covers 70% of monthly rent or 70% of monthly principal and interest payments, up to $1,500 per month, and up to $9,000 total per family. At the time, nobody knew how long the pandemic would last or how long people would be dealing with the financial fallout. The Housing Subcommittee met on January 19th, 2021, and determined that we are nearing the exhaustion of the available allocated funds. Further, we anticipate the demand for assistance will grow. Many Stoughton residents are understandably reluctant to ask for assistance until they have no other options. Stoughton is a strong and resilient community of hardworking folks. As time goes on and people remain out of work or on reduced hours, the need gets more urgent. We are requesting additional funding for the program in order to be able to provide assistance without interruption. If the town was to do nothing at this time, the funds would be in danger of being exhausted, and we would find ourselves with no expeditious way of providing for the families in the program now and those who will be looking for assistance in the months ahead. For this reason, we recommended that the Select Board with the Housing Subcommittee jointly apply to the CPC for an additional $250,000 in funding, and further place an article on the 2021 annual town meeting warrant. These funds, if recommended by the CPC and approved by town meeting, would provide the means to continue to help the Stoughton residents through this most difficult time. And I'd take a quick moment to note that the Select Board heard a similar narrative last night and voted to move forward with this application. The Housing Subcommittee looked at what has been spent to date and the anticipated increase in applications. We further did an analysis projecting how much money would be spent once current and pending applications reach their maximum payouts through the program. This information indicates to us that Stoughton residents are now feeling the strain of the prolonged shutdown to our economy, and we feel it prudent to ask for consideration to replenish the Housing Assistance Fund. This allows the town to continue to support those residents who are struggling to make ends meet, and further puts the town in a position to confidently continue to stabilize our housing market, keeping folks in their homes, and allowing the state and federal government to respond to this ever-changing pandemic. I'll take a moment to briefly run through the numbers with you that aided the subcommittee in coming to this conclusion. You will find in your packet a projection sheet that shows the program has assisted 32 families from August of 2020 through January of 2021 by providing $183,593 in aid. Additionally, we have 15 applicants that are in process, a significant increase in comparison to our normal monthly applications. Barry Castler and I did some projections based on current recipients and pending applications, and we projected that approximately $425,000 would be needed to fulfill the current requests for aid. This would leave the program with a mere $75,000. With the allocation of an additional $250,000 in CPC funds, we feel this should be enough to maintain the assistance this town will require before the pandemic runs its course and we can return to some sort of normality. As always, any unspent funds remaining at the end of the program will be returned back to the CPA fund. In response to the COVID-19 crisis, locally administered emergency rental assistance programs have been established in over 80 cities and towns, with more than $30 million in initial assistance. Stoughton, as you know, and we've already stated, has allocated $500,000 in direct aid to renters and deed-restricted homeowners, with an additional $10,000 set aside for administrative costs. This has allowed the town of Stoughton to respond to specific needs for their residents. I am honored to have been a part of this effort, and I thank you all for having given the town the means to do this for our residents. I am asking the CPC to once again realize the importance of this program and insert an article to the town meeting in the 2021 annual town meeting warrant. Through the hard work of the subcommittee, the CPC, and the select board, we have accomplished what we intended to do, and that is to help residents struggling with a loss of income, and additionally have provided a stable future for Stoughton's housing market. Please continue this work for our residents. We have provided an updated policy reflecting the changes that have been made to the original program since its inception, a draft warrant article, a financial projection explaining why we feel this new allocation is necessary, the current expenditures in the program, an urgent review application to the CPC, a full application, and all supporting documentation. The subcommittee welcomes any thoughts on additional information this board feels may be helpful. The subcommittee has made an effort to minimize the workload put on the select board with such a short time frame, which is why we've put all this information together for all of us tonight. And I want to thank you for consideration of this request, and I'm happy to answer any questions at this time that any of the members of the board or public would have.
Thank you, Mark. That was a very thorough report, and the report you submitted to us was very important. I do have a couple of questions, and then I'll go to the commission. The first is, you spent approximately 200,000 out of 500,000.
Correct.
You got 300 left. If those 15 were to be acceptable tomorrow, would this 300,000 that you have left last until the annual town meeting or until July 1?
So I'm glad. That's a great question, Mr. Chair. The short answer is yes. The way we handled our projections was we took a percentage of the existing applications and then added what the normal application cycle monthly has been. And we projected that we'll be very close, but we would have enough funds to cover this through the annual town meeting. And assuming it was voted in the positive, we would have funding to continue the program.
I mean, I do have a second question, and that is, when you add 250, if you're going to spend another 300,000 between now, which is basically February and March, and
April, yep,
in 3 months, then with more people applying, 250 doesn't seem to me to last more than a month or two.
So the way we did our projections, we actually had to project through until July 1st, where July 1st starts the new fiscal year. So the additional 250,000 wouldn't be available to us until then. So our projection went right through June rather than through April, Mr. Chair. You know, the vaccination program nationwide is picking up speed. The federal government has taken a much stronger stance on moving this forward at this point. And although a pretty aggressive look, seems that they're looking to be able to inoculate approximately 200 million people by, you know, the end of the summer. The point I'm trying to make is that we should see the need for aid start to wane and cut back. We thought a lot about, you know, how we would handle the money. $750,000 in total aid available is one of the stronger programs in the state. I know Newton, I believe, has upwards of $1 million. But for a community our size, I think we're right on track for where we need to be. Obviously, I'd fund as much as I could to it, but we didn't want to ask for too much.
That's fine. Now, my second question is, let's assume that the 250 comes in on July 1st or shortly thereafter, how much longer can you continue with this fund at the rate you are projecting?
good question. Barry, maybe I could lean on you a little bit for some of that projected analysis. We were thinking by the end of the year, it should carry us. Is that a fair, or any of the subcommittee members that were here maybe could fill in the blank there?
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement that the rest, with another $250, that should carry us through the end of the calendar year.
Okay, any
Uh,
questions? Yes, John, John Linehan.
Yeah, I have to say, as somebody who manages a business in this crazy world that we've been living in, making those kind of projections very accurately is not even realistic.
I agree.
I agree, but you got to do the best you can. Joe Scardino.
we, in the event that you're correct or we're not optimistic enough as far as having enough funds, we do have the ability, perhaps for a fall town meeting, to give us another push if we needed it. So we didn't count on that, but that option is available to us, and we'll know long before a October or November town meeting whether or not we have enough funds in the pipeline.
Anyone
John,
else?
I have a,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
John, you hear,
Who is
can you hear
talking?
me?
Yes.
Dwight,
Oh,
I-
yes,
I
Dwight,
just
go
wanna-
ahead.
I wanted to ask Barry to send me again the link to this meeting, because the link that I have is dead. So that's kind of a separate thing. I sent him an email, but if he can just send me the email of the link, maybe I can get connected the way I'd like to. Thank you.
Okay, I can see he's hard at work to do that right now. All right, any other comments on this matter from members of the committee?
Yes. If I could. I think that we've had a lot of failed projects when it comes to housing, and this one is really critically important right now. And I think we're really making a difference for people in town. So I support it.
And then I do have one question for you, Mark, if you know. Are the landlords making any concession to assist in this rental help?
So I don't have an answer as to whether or not any of the landlords are personally making additional contributions to this with their tenants, but one of the concerns or one of the stipulations that we were interested in making, and you'll find this in the guidelines, is that the landlord is not allowed to evict the person during the period of time in which they're receiving assistance. And, you know, it has been our experience, at least from what we've been hearing from Colleen in general, is that landlords have been very good about working with the renters, their clients, and, you know, they've been patient with it. I'm not sure beyond that what else is happening from a case to case basis.
Okay,
But
I will comment that I have some sympathy for the landlords. They have taxes and mortgages to pay as well. And so this not only helps the people who need help paying the rent, but it does help the people who are receiving the rent.
absolutely, and that is part of the stabilization of the housing market. If we have a situation where we have a number of people being evicted all at once, it doesn't just affect the renters. Obviously, it does impact them the greatest, but it also affects the landlords and their ability to pay their property taxes, continue to pay their trash and sewer rates. So doing this does indirectly help the town. It isn't the reason we set this up, but stabilizing the housing market that's a part of that, ensuring that the landlords can continue to pay their bills as well. And that's important to us.
That's the opposite of collateral damage. That's collateral benefit.
Right.
Any
Exactly.
other comments from members of the committee? If there is none, are there any members of the public who wish to be heard on this matter? Barry Kay, have you seen any request for comment? You're muted, Barry. We are not hearing you. Okay. That having been said, I guess a
John,
motion is
Roberta
in order.
Harback has
Would
her hand
you
up.
like to make a motion?
John,
sorry, what?
Roberta Harback is looking to speak.
Oh, okay. Roberta,
Yeah, just a quick comment.
please.
I have been posting it in the town crier on and off. I haven't done it the last few weeks, so now that I know you guys are still continuing with this program, I will get it in for next week's town crier for you guys. Keep it going.
Thank you, Roberta.
Well,
Just want to mention
we are
There it
not
is, over.
continuing until after this vote. But we'll see how it comes out. Any other comments from any member of the public or from any member of the committee? Okay, hearing nothing, a motion is in order from a member of the committee. Does anyone wish to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair, that
muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes, now I can.
Second,
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the $250,000 that, to move forward to town meeting that Dwight just seconded.
Is there a second on that motion after it's made? John Linehan, do you second that motion? He did. He did. All right, on the motion to recommend approval to town meeting of an additional $275,000.
sorry, 250,000.
270,000?
No, 250.
Oh,
250.
I said 270. Okay, 250,000 to be added to the Housing Assistance Fund. That's the motion. I'm going to poll the board. Dwight,
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, can I interrupt real quickly? I
Yes.
just wanted, we need to identify what account this is coming from. Should this come from undesignated?
oh, it's coming from the Housing Fund. It will be allocated to the Housing Fund, but to the
Okay.
extent that there's not enough funds in the Housing Fund, it will go into the undesignated fund.
No problem. Just didn't want to create a problem for later. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good comment, good comment. So let's start again. Dwight,
Yes. Yes.
Janice is not with us, is she? Mark,
Yes.
Olabumne, has she joined? No. Barry Crimmins has not joined. John Linehan,
Yes.
Laurice Bell. Laurice, she's on by phone. We'll come back to Laurice. Joe Scardino,
yes.
John Morton votes yes. Laurice, can you hear us? We cannot hear you if you can hear us. If you
You're still
can't hear
muted, Maurice.
I think she's muted.
Laurice? Well, we have, let me see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 votes. So the motion has passed. And Laurice, if you do hear this and can come back later and tell us how you voted, that would be appreciated. All right, I would like, with the permission of the committee, to take the acquisition of 5-acre Grayman parcel off, out of order. Is that all right with the committee?
Mr. Chair, my only concern is we have two different applications. Both people are here. Mr. McCrisky is here with the request on the fire engine, and Deborah Roberts is here to hear about the 5-acre Gray Max parcel. How do we expeditiously do this?
All right, well, I mean, I'm willing not to have that motion, and we would continue to the next matter, which is the annual report. I think that was covered in the introduction. So we would go to the discussion of the establishment of a affordable housing trust.
Well, we could probably put that until later in the meeting to accommodate the
Yeah,
select.
can we do one or the other and?
Yeah, I'm
let the-
fine with that. Absolutely.
Okay, well, if we take them if we take them in the order that they're on the agenda, then the next item would be the fire engine preservation project. So we'll start with that. Who is presenting on that? Is Joe McCrisky is with us, I know. There you are. I see you, Joe. You're in the upper right-hand corner. Go ahead, Joe. You make a presentation.
Well, I would love the opportunity, but I wouldn't want to bore you all. I think that I made the presentation on the fire truck. You've all had all the documents I submitted to you, a little bit of what we do with the truck, not to get in again all over that of the historic value of the truck. And I did send in some letters of support on the truck. One from the entire board of directors at the Stoughton Historical Society who are in favor of it. There was one from firefighter Don Chipman, who's the unofficial historian of the Stoughton Fire Department, as well as one from Howard Smith, who is, he's very humble when he says he's not the expert, but he's good enough to have written books on the history of the Maxim fire truck line. And he is the go-to guy on how many of these trucks are around. He has all the data on them. And in his letter, he did mention that it's very seldom that we see a truck be able to get back to the community it's in. So I guess I'd be more open to answering any questions that you folks have. The only thing that I would like to repeat is, just the uniqueness of this request is that this fire truck, unlike anything in a museum or the historic preservation of a building, which you folks have stood by, flawlessly and done some great things for the history of the town as well. But this one here is the only one that goes out and travels to the residents. Whether it's, the town 4th of July events where we have kids on the fire truck getting pictures, this recent 4th of July where there was nothing for COVID, but Engine 2 went out on a 7-hour tour of the town and went down into the neighborhoods and people got to see the truck and have pictures on it. So again, not to get into it and to rehash the whole thing, I believe that you all, know my passion for this. It is something that I've been doing now for 15 years. This isn't a fly-by-night request. It's something that, several of you have talked with over the years that I would be coming. It would be nice to get this done. And I think this is the right time. And again, with the opportunity that it's very seldom that you see these these timeframes come up where a restoration specialist can take it in and get it done. All we have to do is say yes, and he's going to stop preparing on his end. So I'd be more inclined to answer any questions any of you would have.
All right, thank you, Joe. Questions, Dwight McCarron, go ahead.
I would just like, I heard a reference to the itemized cost, but I could never find it. And I wonder if Barry can send me that, because I can't find it on my screen.
Dwight, don't get confused that what I did with that when I sent it is I added the two proposals to the same document. So if you look at the latest one you have, it would be at the end of that presentation where it says Engine 2, A Piece of Living History. So it would be from the second email you got from Barry with that.
I'll look.
Mr. Chair,
While he's
go ahead. No, go ahead, John. Go ahead.
while he's looking, I was just going to ask Joe, how long did you think it would be able to last from this rehab?
Well, I'll tell you, John, it's 92 years old now, and it's got the original engine in it. They did an older restoration in the late 70s, early 80s, but it was not near what we'll be doing on this. And with the amount of mileage that the truck puts on, and now firefighting apparatus doesn't normally get hundreds of thousands of miles on it, but it's 92 years old right now, and it's still going, John. This is going to be like it was refurbished, like it was coming right off the assembly line. I can't see this, at 100 years. I mean, it's 92 years old now. It's just unreliable. It's not, it's not pristine. It's not a piece of junk either. That's why I believe this is the time that we can get this done. We've all seen the value of it. And I honestly believe, I mean, based on what we've been able to do in the 15 years that it's been back in Stoughton, is that many people have seen this. This truck has the opportunity to go another 100 years. Now, there's no way we can do that. It could be longer than that because it's going to be here. It's not going anywhere. It will stay within the town of Stoughton unless for some freak reason, I can't understand what it would be. Nobody's going to sell it. And we have a brand new vehicle that can go forever. I mean, it's really, I think it can go beyond 100 years, but, you know, I don't plan on being here then. It'd be nice if we could. Then I'd be the longest serving selectman, guarantee that, right? But no, I mean, John, honestly, realistically, it's 92-year-olds now. We can do another 100 years standing on our head. That's pretty good money for a 100-year investment.
It's cheap money. I have a question for the committee for consideration. We did receive 2 quotes. One was for a drivetrain only rehab. The other was a full restoration. And I'd like to get a consensus from the board. Are we looking at this as a full restoration? I think that would be my preference, but I'd like to hear what the rest of the board has to say.
If I recall, the full restoration was 200 something thousand.
174.
I don't have it in front of me.
174,000, Mr. Chair.
And the partial was what? I don't have it open in front of me.
Joe, what's the partial?
86,2.
Yep, 86.2.
Thank you.
And it's, you know, it's pretty right down the middle, pretty close. But again, if we were to move further on down the road with a full restoration, we're going to have to spend the money to take the engine, the transmission, and the pump out again. And that's going to be cost like anything. You say you spend it, you know, if you do it all at once, you are saving some money, and we are. And I think on the restoration end, it's going to be a lot easier, and that's why there's a difference in the price. I don't know what he would say later on of what the rest of that restoration would be. You know, price will go up between now and then. So it does make sense to it, you know, to do it now. But again, I wanted to give you the option. I would love everybody to support the full restoration. I wouldn't be lying to you. There's a lot that's got to get done to it. It would be nice to get it all done at once, but again, that's your decision. I think the price would go up. I mean, or you know, down a couple of years down the road. I mean, so.
Joe,
Yes, sir.
if I see this, it looks like the full one includes radiator and other cooling things, clamps, system, whatever. But the $86,000 one doesn't.
Well, that was the 86,000. Is the cooling system it should be included in that. I'd have to get fine tuned on that, but it's an engine. It's exactly what it's. The most important thing is that the engine doesn't run, the truck is useless. If the transmission blows up on us, doesn't help us. And the pump, you know, we want to have it pumping. We want to show people what it was like to pump water out of a fire truck like that in 1928.
Right, but I'm talking about the radiator and the general cooling system is for not that much money, $1,250 in the larger one, but I don't see it in the smaller one, and it seems to me like that's kind of a basic thing that should be there.
Well, it wasn't asked specifically, and that could be an oversight of $1,000 if I had to pay for that. If you know, if we didn't do the full restoration, if I had to pay that out of my budget that I have for the fire truck, I'd make it happen. But again, that's why, honestly, I'd love to just do this thing all at once and not have to worry about that. Because there will be things, you know, that will break here and there. You know, and with doing the total restoration, we don't have to worry about that. But again, and I didn't double check, shame on me. I should have included the cooling system in that partial bid. So it wouldn't be much for us to say that if the board chose to go with the drivetrain restoration, you could just add that $1,500, $1,000, whatever it is, and that would be included. But again, you know, I put that in to give you something to match up the funds, but I would really, really hope we could do the full restoration.
Dwight, was there any discussion? What was the nature of the discussion at the Historical Commission or Society?
No, we were in favor. Joe did not have these figures in front of us. He said he was saving them from the CPC. So there was no question it was historically significant. We voted 3-1 to restore it. One person wanted more information, but we didn't have any of these figures. So I'm seeing them now and trying to absorb, if some halfway point here, which actually did include the radiator, hoses, et cetera, which seems like it should be in there. If we went for 100,000, which would be 14,000 over the minimal estimate, should cover the radiator and a few other things. I guess my concern is the amount of money in this climate. If we go the full Monty here, might not be as acceptable as saying, well, we showed some discretion and chose a middle road, which was, well, I'm looking, the 86.2 was the smaller one here, but it doesn't include some things that I think it should. If we were to go, and I'll ask Joe this, with something like we put up forth 100,000, I assume that some of the things from the top part, including the radiator, hoses, cooling system, could go down into it. But that's just kind of off the top of my head and seeing this right now.
Right. Well, there are,
Jody,
we could make anything happen, Dwight. We can make anything happen because let's face it, right now we don't have, anything for restoration. But there's so many things on the truck, that, and again, if you go the 100,000, what's the difference of the 174? So and I've got it, and I apologize. I've got to say, that I am on the other end, but I will take anything that the commission wants to do with it. But I'd be crazy if I didn't say I think we can benefit by just getting it all done now, because again, costs will go up. And if we add up the increases, and I've heard all that argument with some of the buildings we talk about as well in town, is to get it done now. And so, but whatever, if you want to pick a number that's higher than the low one.
I'm also thinking out loud here that the way this will go is this will have to be put out for bid.
Right, and that's already being worked on.
A criteria of the various things that need to be done. And then the question is, if the money we gave, whatever the upper end was, the various people who put in bids would have their number. And I'm trying to weigh out the two things, since this bid here we have in front of us gives us a
I agree
ballpark
that
figure for how Gaspar's would do it. And they may or may not be the people who, once it goes through procurement, do it.
Well, just to give you an idea, Dwight, because it was asked about, the bid and so forth, I did make 2 other phone calls, and one, the guy didn't even want to bid on it. He said he wouldn't even touch it.
I understand, Joe. I've heard you say that, but when procurement takes it, they may go be a little more methodical in putting out a notice for it, and not just a phone call here and a phone call there, but some process that they will.
Well, Dwight, if that happens, then fine. If there's another person out there, and again, if they pop up out of the blue, that's great. If there's a qualified restoration specialist that can take the truck in and they can save some money, and when it comes down to the bid, you never know. If that would have happened, then that's who we'd go with, as long as they're qualified. And, I would assist the procurement department is that, what's the specialist credentials? Has he done these before? There's people that'll always want to restore a fire truck and make the money, but what are their qualifications on the apparatus? Do they know fire?
Any qualified bid application would state what the qualifications were required to get the bid. I mean,
Right.
That would be part of the solicitation. I agree that this would have to go out to bids.
Yes.
And my instinct is toward the $100,000 only because if you send it out to bid, you may get more for your money. I don't know.
Well, I honestly don't think we're going to get more than this one bid, to be honest with you. But again, I'm open to whatever your board wants to do. Remaining hopeful that we can get it all done. But whatever you folks want to do is totally up to you. It's your vote. And I will accept everything with gratitude. Anything that's
All
done.
right. We need a pretty precise vote. And so we need to know what we're voting to approve and how much money, and whether it's going to be bonded or not. This matter shouldn't be bonded, in my view. But we need a pretty precise definition of what we are approving, because we have to follow up on it and make sure that that's how the money is spent. So it seems to me what we're going to say is not less than something if we approve a smaller number, and a full restoration is set out in the application if we approve the full application. The application really that we have defines the work. The money will be defined by bidding, and the limit of that money will be defined by what we act on tonight, unless the municipality agrees to pay beyond what we act on tonight. Yes, Mark?
Well, I know Mr. Scardino has been waiting patiently to talk, so I'm going to defer to him, but I have a comment about this specific part. So, Joe?
Joe, I didn't see your hand raised, so I didn't call on you.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of points. I know that the administrator is supposed to assist you with respect to this. That I find point number one. But people, I understand that you're chairing the meeting, but you know, I've tried physically, I've tried using the hand provision in the, and people should be called on these meetings in order. That's what I do in my planning board meetings.
And I agree with you, Joe. I'm
people
sorry
do
I
it.
didn't see your hand raised, but now you've increased my sensitivities, and I will look for that.
Thank you.
I now see the hand symbol. I didn't even know it.
Well,
That
that's where
you
Mr.
look-
Kelly is supposed to be assisting you in telling you and keeping track of the public as well as the members of the committee that want to speak. And then people lose their thoughts and their arguments and whatnot. But back
Joe,
to the,
it's nobody's fault but mine, and I apologize. So let's get on with what you have to say, because I'm anxious to hear it.
thank you. First of all, Mr. McCrisky indicated on more than one occasion that a drivetrain is one thing, but the appearance of the vehicle, bodywork, lettering, horns, pumpers, the things that are entertaining facilities on the fire apparatus are also important to the community's enjoyment of the fire engine. And if we have something that looks like an old hag, but runs on 12 cylinders, yeah, it still runs, but it's not a source of pride. Having those nice gold letters, having a horn that's nice and loud, water shooting out where it should be shooting out and not where it shouldn't be, is to me a big part of the return on investment for the public. And number two is these people that restore historic items like this are like people that are experts on Da Vinci and Monet paintings. They restore them because they're experts with respect to that painting. And when these people die off, they die off. And Mr. McCrisky, I'm relying on his information that these people aren't a dime a dozen. And as they die off or become unavailable, the price goes up precipitously. I draw your attention to people that have houses with lath plastering. Trying to find somebody to restore lath plastering today is almost as difficult as trying to find somebody to repair this vehicle. So I suggest that we either do it all or nothing, because frankly, it's going to become worse. I don't see us doing this down the road, addressing this again. And I feel very strongly that we should do the whole thing, because the thing that people will most be entertained by and appreciate is a nice shiny engine with all these features working. Thank you for your opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Joe, and I apologize to you again for not calling on you sooner. Any
Mr.
other
Morton?
comments?
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually,
If I could just respond to Joe Scardino, as he did make a point. When we got the fire truck back in Stoughton in 2005, the gentleman that did the restoration is based in West Bridgewater, and it's Mercia's Garage. Mercia's Garage has helped me greatly over the years. Work on the truck myself, taught me things, and he was one of the first people I called, and literally laughed at me on the phone. He says, "Joe, we're not doing those anymore. We haven't done them for 10 years." He says, "I've helped you because you're right there," and I helped him out with something before. So the closest guy won't even touch it. And as I mentioned early on, the only reason this was brought forward the way it was is this guy told me he could do it. Right now, when we go out to bid, I would be more than glad to come up with a wager. And if we see more than one person bid on this, I will be surprised, because I don't know of anybody, and I've learned from hanging around with these people, is that there's nobody there. And when the comment was made to me, if you can get Gaspar, I'd get working on it if that's going to be an opportunity. So if somebody else comes out of the blue that's qualified, I'll be surprised, because normally you know him. The only other one, and he is up in Maine, it's called Firefly Restorations. His name is Andy Swift. Until 2 years ago, he was doing them, but he stopped doing fire trucks and is now staying with only steam engines, and they're on wagons. And he does most of Jay Leno's work on his. So and it was not something I thought was relevant, but Joe Scardino brought it up, is that he's correct. There's not a lot of people out there that have the familiarity with the Maxim trucks. They went out of business in the late 80s. There's not a lot of those trucks around. So to get somebody that knows what they're doing, that's why this is a unique opportunity for us. So I just wanted to respond to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Just 1 minute, one comment. The procurement process is not controlled by us, it's controlled by the town. So
That's correct.
even if there's only one person with this level of money funding, it would have to go out to procurement, as I understand the system.
Yes, and I've spoken with her, John, and she doesn't seem to think it's a problem. She's going to put it out in everywhere, and put the request for proposals out in every avenue that she can, so that we make sure we dot the i's across the t's. And she believed, she said that she believes it'll be a sole proprietor in the end.
I agree with you, Joe, and I think the procurement process is moot. It's not the job of this committee. The question is the allocation of funds. Yes, Mark. Joe, you still have your hand up. Are you willing? You still have enough?
No, that one is that one I'll take responsibility for. I've said my piece, and I thank you for the opportunity to finally get my thoughts across.
All right, thank you. I thank you for your thoughts. And Mark, you had something.
Yes. So to follow up a little bit on what Mr. Scarnino said, I have a couple of different viewpoints on this. I'm in favor of a full restoration, I think is the right way to say it. And I am in favor of it for a couple of reasons. One, I'm not a car mechanic, but I have worked on older vehicles, and I can tell you this is not the type of thing that I want to do piecemeal. Every time I had a 1969 Camaro and got the body done and never got the engine done because I ran out of money, and frankly we had children and had to sell it, and I wished like hell I still had that car because I could probably pay my mortgage with it. But with that said, I did a second one in the early 90s, and it was the same problem. There's just no, it doesn't make sense to piecemeal this, in my opinion. And I respect Dwight's opinion on this and yours about being concerned about funding. We're not talking about millions or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're talking 174. My other concern on this is if we were to only do the drivetrain now, then how much more is it going to cost me? In my opinion, I think 3-4 years down the line, if we did pick it up again, we'd be looking at the same amount of money to get the other half of the work done. I say, and this is my opinion, we either approve, we look to recommend the 174 or we don't as a committee as a whole. I love this. I think now more than ever, this town needs a little joy. And this sparks that joy. I mean, how many of us can see an old fire truck cruising down the street and not put a smile on our face? Mr. McCrisky's been exceptional about getting it out to the public, sharing this gem that we have. in my opinion, this is a small price to pay. I do have one question for you, Mr. McCrisky, through you, Mr. Chairman. Is there, how, if the CPC was to approve this kind of money, would there be some way to, I don't know, create a sign or a plaque or some sort of, what could be done so that the CPC could be recognized in the significant restoration of this vehicle if we did do the whole?
We'll do something, believe me, as I believe that is a part of when I made a statement, is that 100 years from now, people, unless we let them know who they were, 100 years from now, people won't know who made this possible. And I would have it, no problem. There's a place suitable on the truck that we can have a plaque put right on the front of it, and making a statement that, the Community Preservation Committee of 2020-21, voted to restore this fire truck as a gift for the future generations or something like that. I mean, I'm beating the dead horse. I know that, but I think you would all have the same thing if you saw the faces of families, the kids ringing the bell. We've had, people in Ina McMahon. Maybe not everybody remembers Ina. Ina McMahon had the best time of her life riding on that fire truck because she and Bud McMahon, when they were on the Historical Society Board of Directors, were strong supporters of it. This thing is 100% enjoyment for people. There's got to be 1,000 people that have had their picture sitting up on the seat, whether it's at Kids Day at the 4th of July. We had the principal of the middle school, Mr. Guglia, and his family. We drove down his street, didn't know it was his family, and they saw it. It just, I really wish I could have a video and show you the smiles. And it sounds corny, but I think you people know I don't play any bull games. Is that it brings smiles to everybody's face. It's a winner 100%. And
Joe, if I could interject, I did see a lot of the pictures. There were some pictures of Chief Roach, and his son Paul happens to be a good friend of mine. And he and I had a discussion. I actually gave him a copy of that picture that you included. He was delighted to get that picture. And he said, his father spoke very highly of this piece of equipment. I get it. This is, $175,000 of sheer pleasure in a moment where I think this town needs something like this. And I brought this up because the CPC money is taken off of people's bills automatically as a 1.5% line item. This is a great way to use that money. And it's not like we're super tight on funds right now. So that's just my opinion. And I thank you for your time, Mr. Chair.
Mark, if I could just respond to that too.
Dwight?
It was really no, I thought you recognized me, John. I wanted to respond to Mark.
Who was talking?
It's
Joe.
Joe
All right,
responding
Dwight
to Mark.
McCarron.
I think we know the fire truck brings smile to people's faces. Given Mr. Scardino's point, who tends to be a fiscal conservative, if he is prepared to make the nomination that we fund this for the full amount and someone else seconds it, I will vote yes. I don't
All
want
right,
to be
before-
a party for
Joe,
something.
Before the motion, I want to know if
Consider
there's
that.
any other comments that have to be. Joe, do you have a comment?
No, I'm Joe
No,
McCrisky.
I'm
No,
Joe
I'm good.
Scardino. Joe Scardino.
I just said absolutely. I
I
move
see
that.
a hand raised and I don't. Roberta Harbach, you have a comment.
Yeah, I do. I actually wasn't joining this meeting for the fire truck, and I found it very interesting. And as much as you know how I just think that everybody loves a fire truck. And with all the historical projects that you people provide for roofs and stuff like that, which I think is great, this is something that is actually something that you can see. And for $175,000 cash, I hope, this is great. I mean, I'm looking at Joe's face. You should see his face. He's like a kid in a candy store, all happy talking about this fire truck. And I think it's a great project, like I said, and on what other people have said. I don't want to parrot everybody, but who doesn't like a fire truck? And I think this is just a really great project. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Roberta. Any other member of the committee want to speak?
Yes, this is Larice.
Any other member of the committee first?
Hillary,
All
Hello?
right, any other member of the
Larice,
public? want-
Speaking up, John. Larice.
What?
Larice.
Larice.
Yes. Can
go-
you hear
do
me?
have- Yes.
I can.
Okay. No, I just would like to say that I'm totally for this. I've heard from so many different people that are so excited about the idea of having this restored, and it's something that I think it's it's Stoughton's history, and I think it's very important. And I am going to hopefully vote for the yes on the full project. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Larice. Any other members of the public wish to be heard? All right, hearing nothing. Is there a motion on this matter? Joe Scardino, do you want to make a motion?
Yes, Mr. McCarron conditioned his vote on my moving this, and I do so without reservation.
I will second it, Mr. Chair.
And that is a full restoration.
All right, so you're moving that 200, what is it, 275?
100, Barry, could you clarify the numbers, please?
Yes, the application was for $185,000.
Okay, $185,000 for full restoration of the fire truck, including those items shown on the itemized report that was provided to this meeting, and any additional and work that could be had within that price.
And
And
Joe
I also
Scardino,
would-
we talking cash?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
I'd also like to have a plaque on the fire truck, which would say approved, but with funds provided by the Community Preservation Committee and approved by town meeting. Give town meeting some credit for it too.
I would consider that a friendly amendment.
Okay.
And the motion has been seconded, Mr. Chair, by myself.
All right, the motion's made and seconded, and it's for full restoration. I'm going to pull the board on that motion. Dwight?
Just to be clear, with cash and.
Yeah.
Yes, cash. And it comes from the Historic Preservation Fund.
Yes,
All right. Dwight?
yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Barry Crimmins, is he here? Is Olabumney here? John Linehan?
Yes.
Larice Robel?
Yes. Yes.
Joe Scardino?
Yes.
And John Morton votes yes. And thank you, Joe Morkrisky, for everything you've done.
You missed me, Mr. Chair. Mark Semanian also votes yes.
Oh, Mark Samini, did I miss you? I'm sorry.
Yep. John Linehan, did you vote?
He voted yes.
It is unanimous among those who are here, and thank you, Joe.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I can, honestly, you all know me, and this is just awesome. You know, if the things that I've done in the town over the years, this is the best thing that's ever happened, in my opinion. And I couldn't do it without your support. My heart goes out. Thanks beyond my wildest dreams. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You'll be happy, and I look forward. Thank you so much.
Joe, thank you for bringing
One
it to
footnote,
us.
Joe.
Yes, Mr. Morton.
Joe, you're going to have to put the article in the warrant, and you're going to
Well-
be the petitioner at town meeting to speak on it.
I'll be ready.
The committee
Yep.
just gives a recommendation at town meeting,
Right.
but the petitioner, which is you, presents it.
Right. I'm well aware of that. We have time.
Right.
And
That
I'll
having
make
been
sure
said,
there's a suitable presentation. The same materials that you got will be provided to all town meeting reps and so forth. We'll have our A game ready. Thank you
Thank
again.
do you have an
Thank you all.
article? do you have an article to submit?
I will talk with the chair and I will get working on that first thing tomorrow morning, sir.
You're a gentleman and a scholar. Thank you.
Right back at, thank you all again. Thank you so much,
Bye.
everybody.
You're welcome.
Good night.
Okay, we're moving on. Is there a
Excuse me.
question before we move on?
Yes, this is Larice
What's that?
again. It's Larice.
Yes,
Yes,
Larry.
Louise.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that I voted yes on the COVID emergency housing assistance.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
That will be recorded. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, the next item on the agenda is acquisition of 5-acre Gray Max parcel on West Street.
Thank you,
Uh,
John. Should I?
John?
We need a motion to open it?
I don't think so. I mean, we don't have to open a hearing on this. We just need to move into it and you're the presenter.
All righty.
What it is, wasn't there the emergency appeal part of it? We may have to accept that part of it.
Yes, we do. That's correct, Mr. Chair. This is now considered an urgent review because it's sat. So I know Mr. Linehan sent a letter this morning.
Oh, I
And-
see. Yes, you're right. Because of the urgent review, we have to vote to consider it. I agree with you. I'm sorry, I missed that. So a motion is in order to consider this as an emergency matter.
So moved.
Dwight moved. Who seconds? Anybody?
Second, I'll second.
John Linehan seconds.
Clarice
All right.
seconded it.
Luis did.
Oh, Larice, okay. On the motion to open this hearing, Dwight,
Yes.
Mark,
So, Mr. Chair, I'm in a little bit of a pickle here because we've instated an urgent review application process, which wasn't filled out. I do want to hear this tonight.
Hold on, Mark, I did fill it out.
Oh, you did? I didn't see that, Mr. Linehan. I'm sorry.
Yes, I did.
I got a letter. I didn't get the application.
I don't think you saw the actual, did you not send the form out, Barry? I think just a text.
I just got a one-page letter.
Oh, I filled out the form too.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that, John, so thank you for clarifying that. Given that you filled that out, I'm going to take you on your word on that, and I would vote yes to hear the urgent review with that information.
all right, continuing the poll of the board, John Linehan,
Yes.
Larice, Rubel,
Yes, and I'd like to also add that Barry sent out the full application this afternoon.
yes,
So-
I got it too.
Yeah,
Joe
no, it is.
Scardino.
Oh, you're right, Larice.
Joe Scardino on the motion.
Yes.
All right, and I vote yes. So that I didn't miss anybody this time, I don't think. John Linehan, would you like to?
Okay, as you know, you've heard about this for a year now at various points along the way, and it's been delayed because of the legal maneuvers that I thank the select board for carrying on through the whole year, getting it straightened out. I'm getting feedback. I may be speaking in staccato, but I'll do my best. Just so you know, the Open Space Committee did meet just 2 weeks ago and re-ratified their support for this acquisition. And this is Chapter 61 tax status property, so the town does have right of first refusal. There is no need to get an evaluation on the property because there is a real sale price for the property from a year ago. And I think it's really important, the way this land was transmitted and then offered to the town was suboptimal, shall we say. And I think it's very important that we do not let that stuff go on. This acquisition of this property clearly supports the goals of the open space and recreation plan. It's by not developing it, I think one of the most important factors are that we're going to be protecting our water. It's both groundwater, surface water, i.e. Ames Pond, and drinking water in the form of wells, subterranean wells, both private and the McNamara well that so many people in town drink water from. And as you all know, we've had a long-standing battle in Ames Pond against both invasive and native aquatic vegetation that has taken off because of the residential development that's taken place around that pond that has introduced non-point source pollutants and fertilizers from septic systems and from lawn care and from a number of other sources. So I think it's really important that we protect it from that. Beyond that, West Street is one of only 3 scenic roads in Stoughton. And it's been voted such by the town meeting back in 2007. And all of you know that when you drive that road, it's like almost like no other road in Stoughton. And it harkens back to an earlier day, a time that, like the fire truck we talked about, should have a place in the preservation of our town's heritage. I think it's something that future generations should be able to experience. And these lots actually are right along the street. They are open, they are meadows, very pleasant looking, and I think it's important that we protect them. There are also wildlife benefits to preserving these lots. It is, as I said, meadows, and increasingly in Massachusetts, anything that lives in grasslands is becoming more and more endangered. We've controlled fires, we've controlled cutting, and the grassland species such as bobolinks and meadowlarks and many other grassland species are becoming increasingly threatened. This property, based on its geographic location, also helps to create a wildlife corridor that goes from Ames Pond up to our Big Bird Street conservation area. That's really important. A lot of species use that throughout the year to go back and forth from uplands to lowlands and down to the pond. So there are a heck of a lot of benefits for the town with this. The ownership, to me, and I'm not involved in the legal matters, seems a bit murky still between Gray Max and Stoughton Residences, both LLCs. But again, the purchase price was established a year ago. We would match it, $330,000. I asked for $360,000 because there will be an expense associated with establishing a conservation easement. And I think there is also on the property a septic system that we may want to do a 21E on the property. So I added in some extra money to cover those things. I don't know if it's perfect, but I think that it should cover it. And I ask for your support in supporting that we let it go eventually to town meeting to make the final decision.
Would you want that bonded or cash?
I prefer cash. It's not like some of the big parcels we purchased.
Are there any comments from members of the committee? Yes, Mark Semanian and then Joe Gardino.
So some of my, and first of all, I do want to say that I commend John Linehan for the work he's put into this. This is not a property John and I see eye to eye on clearly, but I don't want to take away from all the hard work he has put into this. And I want him to know that I appreciate that hard work. With that said, I have first a technical question or concern, and this may end up going to our program administrator. As John said, we have a year-old appraisal. I don't know that that's sufficient for, and I understand, John, the town's position, but I'm asking from
it's not an appraisal, Mark. It's a sale price.
Yeah, but it is a sales price. You're right. but I'm asking Barry, is that going to satisfy the needs from DLS on this question? If we were to buy this at $360,000 without any indication as to what the value of the property is.
I did check on that today with the Mass Coalition, and this is a case that they have never seen another thing comparable to. I'm not sure there has been another case like this in Massachusetts. And basically what it would come down to is whether town council agrees that the sale price from a year ago fits the definition required under the CPA. You have to have an appraisal that is recognized by the appraisal industry as being valid. So whether a price from a year ago would fit that bill or not is up to whatever town council decides on that.
So there would have to be a part of any motion that was made to move this forward would have to include that opinion from town council first and foremost as part of the conditions. But I do have some other things that I'd like to talk about. I was on the select board meeting last night and heard from James Conlon, what is he? Is he our environmental officer? Is that his official title?
Yes.
Okay. James Conlon gave a brief slideshow that John Linehan narrated, if you will. Actually very well done. But we heard from James Conlon. We also heard from a number of residents who live in that area. And the consensus from all the residents that I heard supports my feeling that this is a tax collecting property that is not developable. I have tremendous concerns that the CPC would spend money on a piece of property that it was stated by the town manager. Many of the residents, nobody feels, even the previous owner and Mr. McNamara had said he couldn't put a house on this. So that's sort of my second concern about this, is that we're going to take something off the tax rolls we don't need to take off the tax rolls. The third concern I have brings up a point that Mr. Linehan had brought up, and that is the septic system on the property. Additionally, there is runoff from the street, West Street, that is directed via pipeline into this property itself. This demands a 21E before we could buy it. We can't buy an environmental hazard as a committee. I think that would be a huge mistake, whether or not environmentally the land heals itself or not. Given the use of the land, given the fact there's a septic on it, which Mr. Linehan actually brought up earlier as problematic for Ames Pond, and given that we have runoff from the road, which includes oils, hydraulics, and so on and so forth from vehicles, not even to mention the salt. Those are all factors to me that necessitate a 21E happening for any money to be allocated to this. We would not be doing our due diligence if we didn't mandate that as part of the deal. I think you've heard a lot from me already tonight, and you know how I feel about this. I am not in favor of this for all of the reasons I've stated. There's no value, from my opinion, to take this off the tax rolls and put it into the town's hands with no understanding as to what we're going to do with it in the future.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Scardi,
No,
so
Thank you, Mr. Costello. I appreciate that. I have a corollary concern to Mr. Zamanian's, and that is the bucolic image that Mr. Linehan generated so eloquently. We may end up not having that. Mr. Linehan may end up with a check in his hand because of the work done by Mr. Zamanian with respect to the title. I have never seen a case where a property's been conveyed and a mortgage put on it, that the land court would turn around and say, you give the money back, you buyer number two, give the money back to the bank. And then you give the money back to the seller, the original seller. And because you have to put the title back in the hands of the town of Stoughton, who wants to purchase it. When this goes to land court, and I don't see any form, shape, or manner to avoid that, to clear the title on this property, because the town will want clear title. And it's, as I understand, it's been well documented that the property's been conveyed and mortgaged on. And I think that the land court will turn around to the town and say, here's your check. And the whole purpose of the Open Space Committee would be vitiated, because we don't have the answer. This property is not ready for us to enjoy as open space. There's several, I would guess, several $1,000s, probably close to 100,000 in legal fees at the land court to clear this title. And that, combined with some of the other things that I'm hearing from other people, like the septic and the 21E and so on, I'm wondering what equity is left in the property. But more importantly, I think that the damages that the land court's going to give us is not the property in our own names, but give us a check for the negligence of the conveyancing that went on in a negligent and illegal fashion before. And so I think that's
Joe,
what we're doing.
I'd like to ask you a question, Joe. Your experience goes beyond mine in this realm. If you had a purchase and sale to the town signed by both the owner and the purported or attempted purchaser, would that solve the problem?
No.
You've got a bank that's, I mean, first of all, I don't know which buyer you're talking about, because the land's been transferred. You have a bank involved. We certainly don't want the mortgage to pay as a town. So that mortgage is going to have to be cleared, Mr. Morton. And I have been in cases of gigantic encroachment. And the land court has approached this. It's a building, a skyscraper that was encroaching 1 foot. And they didn't take the skyscraper down. They arbitrated a figure for money damages because it's totally impractical to have somebody tear down a $50 million building for $1 million worth of damage. So, I mean, I had hoped that when the Board of Selectmen brought this forward, that they had cleared all the legal issues. And I have yet to see anything to say that title is clear and marketable. And if that were the case, I might be persuaded to vote differently, but I'm not going to buy a lawsuit. I'm not going to buy a lawsuit with Mr. McNamara over his septic system. And I'm not going to buy a lawsuit with a bank that has many more legal resources than we do. I mean, there's much more property throughout the town to try to buy that doesn't have these constraints attached to it. And that's my question. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Joe. Let me ask Roberta, as the select person in town, has the Board of Selectmen considered the title issue as Joe has described it?
So we are researching that now. Yesterday was really the first time we had an opportunity to discuss it. So we didn't know if the title was, at that time yesterday, we did not know if the title was clear, didn't know if the back taxes were paid. That was just the first time we were hearing the information, and which is the reason I wanted to join your meeting to see if you had additional information that was not shared with us yesterday.
And the information that I'm working on is a presentation made by Mr. Zamanian after doing a yeoman's work at the registry, coming up with the documents, the mortgage, the deed transfers, and bringing them to the meeting and passing them out. And that leads me to believe, with my legal experience, that no land court is going to turn around to all those parties and say, reverse your part of the transaction. They don't have I'm not sure that a bill in equity could ever result in that kind of a remedy.
All right.
If I might just follow up, Mr. Chair, to what Mr. Scardino was saying, you'll notice, Deborah, one of my biggest questions last night was the tax issue,
Yes.
among other things. And the one piece of information I don't have, so I know the things I do know is the 20th of January, 2020, the title was transferred from Graymax LLC to Stoughton Residences LLC without incident. And that doesn't, I don't know what that means. I'm not a lawyer, but in basic terms, to me, when I purchased this house, one of the things I had to do to pass title on a home without incident was to ensure that there were no liens on the property. So when I hear the words without incident, I make a presumption, and I'll be the first to admit it, that title had to have been cleared prior to the sale happening, which brings me back to the question that I've been asking right from the start. Did the assessor's office, or did the assessor's office not receive a check for the back taxes? That is not a question I have been able to get answer to. This has been in an executive session, and I know I'm treading on very thin ice, at least for the select board right now.
Right.
So I don't have it. That's the one part of this equation that is missing. Did somebody or did somebody not receive a check
So
for
I
the
think
amount of
Chair, Madam Chair, Christine just raised her hand. She may have some additional information.
Through the chairman to Mr. Zemanian's questions and Mr. Scardino's questions. As Select Person Roberts stated, we had this item in executive session to determine if the town, in fact, had the right of first refusal and the ability to act on that right of first refusal. So we haven't looked into the property any further than that. That's what all the executive session meetings were about. And then we voted to move it into the public session to have a hearing on the right of first refusal, whether to exercise it or not, last night. I'm not sure if this committee has approved the purchase of a land that's, chapter lands before, if the town has ever exercised its right of first refusal to purchase a property. I'm sure we have that built into various affordable housing and things of that nature. And I know that we've not executed that in the past, but I'm not sure if we've ever moved forward with it and how that process would work in terms of title clearing and all that. Typically, when the town purchases property, we usually include an eminent domain provision, which then would clear the title and any issues that we'd probably foresee. So it'd be just like any other land purchase for the title clearing process. In terms of the back taxes, we can probably get that answered. Again, that would probably come out of some sort of P&S. If there's owed taxes, when you exchange the land, you just subtract that off of the purchase price. So it's $330. So if there was $100,000 worth of owed taxes, you would just pay $230 instead. So I think those are issues that would be worked out. It's more of the decision if we want to move forward with preserving this land or not, and if it meets the qualifications of open space. And that's what this committee needs to decide. A, do you have the money for it? B, does it fit the bill of CPA? And is it ready to go? So all that other kind of stuff that comes with it is what works through the whole buying of property process that we've gone through with numerous things around town. For example, when we did the Randolph Savings Bank, we did the 21E after the purchase. So, it goes through the process the same way. So these questions would be answered once this committee decides whether they want to recommend it or not. And if it doesn't go through this channel, there's always the opportunity to just go straight to town meeting for general fund. But I'm not sure the board's in a position to do that this year because of COVID. So, and the borrowing would be more challenging, obviously.
Okay,
And
thank you.
Mr. Morton, if I could just follow up with that.
Just a moment, we've got several people that had their hands up.
People have their raised.
Follow up to what
Up.
Ms. Lowe said.
I'm sorry, Mark, excuse me for a minute. I was just going to say that in the order of people having their hands up, it's Joe next, then John Lenahan.
Who
I just
who
forgot to
was up?
mention.
I think it was John Linehan.
a brief follow-up to Ms. Howe, Chairwoman Howe's statement. I totally agree under normal circumstances that the mechanism shouldn't be an issue, but unfortunately, in this case, the property was sold, which makes it an issue for the CPC. So I can certainly respect your position on that, but respectfully, I think it is something we have to consider. From a legal standpoint, we go before DLS, so that there is a concern there. That's who we answer to, not town council, but DLS
All
ultimately.
right,
Right,
I'm out.
speaking
There's a
of-
lot of people who want to speak right now. I'm going to say one thing, and then we'll go to, I think the order that I saw hands was John Lenahan, then Joe Scardino. We continue to say that this property was sold. However, if there was a right of first refusal to the town that wasn't given, there's a question as to whether the property could be sold when it's subject to a right of first refusal. And that is what complicates the title. If that transaction to this existing alleged owner wasn't valid, then the old owner owns the property, and you get into the problem that Joe Scardino was describing. Who owns the property? Who do you pay? And the title might be a mess in that case. All right, John Linehan.
I think Joe was actually before me.
Thank you, Mr. Linehan. I just wanted to add one more point. We were discussing the P&S. Now, let me just say that it's not an uncommon practice that P&Ss aren't always reflecting the total consideration. And one point was mentioned throughout the discussion, and that is the tax issue. So, for example, the property could have been worth $500,000, and there could have been $200,000 in taxes. So the P&S actually reads, and the deed would say the consideration recited would be $300,000, and it would reduce the cost of the stamps, and the record would reflect a $300,000 sale. That is why the CPC requirement for an appraisal isn't vitiated by the P&S, because it is a known fact that the P&S may not be a straightforward value of the land itself, but reflective of decrements to the purchase price due to conditions such as taxes and other costs, buyers or sellers' credits. So the P&S price may not be the fair market value in accordance with the DLS's rules for the CPC. And that was my concern with not getting an opinion from DLS that particular requirement can be waived by the P&S. And the mere fact that Stuart Savanor couldn't give Mr. Castler a straight answer on that also tells me that I wouldn't be comfortable advising a client not to take the next step in order to get that opinion from DLS before I told my client to sign any documents. Thank you for that second opportunity.
Thank you. John Linehan.
Thank you, John.
We can't hear you. We can't hear you, John.
Some of the naysayers on this project are putting out an awful lot of conjecture. And, you know, the pipe doesn't come from the road, it goes under the road. It prevents flooding across West Street, which would create a hazard. It's just water off the land. It's not all kinds of pollutants. It's water off the land that's on the other side of West Street, which is, you know, pasture land. To say that it's unbuildable is also conjecture. I spent 22 years on the Conservation Commission, Mark, and I saw a lot of houses get wedged in. John is still on there, and he has as well. You know, I think when we talk about the equity that's left in the property at the end, I think that we should also consider whether we could get damages to cover our expenses, which is would seem fair to me where there was a transgression of the law. So I don't worry about that. I think all of these legal matters are something that the select board can handle. They have town council. we don't have to sit here and conjecture on them. This is as Chairwoman Howe said to begin with, we have a simple question before us, which is, do we recommend purchase of this land or not? Not with a whole lot of conjecture about the legal entanglements. That's for them to worry about. I think they have legal counsel. We don't. We have a couple of people who are lawyers on this committee, but the official lawyer is in their hands. And I think that this is an important piece of property and serves an important role where it is. And I would stand by my recommendation that we support it. We ultimately allow it to go to town meeting for final review. And I'm sure that by the time town meeting comes around, we will have clear answers to the outstanding questions that are sitting before us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from any member of the committee? Yes.
Yeah, I just want to follow up briefly on what Mr. Linehan said. The facts that I was able to determine by being on the property was there is a septic outlet on the property, approximately 10 feet in from the road. The outlet that I found on the far side of the property appeared to connect to a grate system. So that is why that was said, John, not because I'm bringing about conjecture. I'm just looking at what the facts on the road are physically. That grate is open and capable of absorbing any and all materials from the road. That's why I made that statement, nothing more, nothing less. I'm not looking to make things up. You know, I don't approve of this property, and I don't approve of it for a lot of reasons, but I think for us not to look at the legal aspect of this is foolish from us, because as I said before, we report to DLS and not to town council and not to the select board. So ultimately our actions are going to be looked upon by DLS, and that's one of my concerns.
John?
Dwight, yes.
This is a tough one for me. I think I know the property reasonably well, and there's been some hyperbole, I think, on both sides here. I appreciate John's efforts to save this property. I also know there's never been a piece of open space property that John didn't want to save. I believe that I draw the line on this one. Seems to me what we're determining is, do we want to give town meeting saying, well, CPC is for this, so here's $300,000 to use if you choose to. I think given all the variables here, the property may or may not be buildable. We do own a lot of property across the street. John knows that I would prefer to save the money for another property. Other properties, I think finally, with regret, I will probably vote no on this.
Thank you, Dwight. Any other comments?
Yes, there's a comment from a member of the public.
Yes, are there members of the public who wish to be heard on this matter?
There's Juan Fox has his hand up.
Who does? Oh, go ahead. There is somebody with a hand up. I don't know who it is.
It's Juan Fox. Go ahead.
Juan Fox.
Yes, go ahead, Juan.
Two things. I understand John Lanahan's need or desire to maintain the ecological health of the area, and worries about what would be built there, I assume. But one of the things, if you look at the GIS map, there is a good portion of that is listed as wetland. And with a 100-foot buffer, you'd have approximately like 50% of that property would not be built upon anyway, even if they decided to do something back there. So that would provide a lot of the protection that he's desiring. And the other thing I say is that what is the recreational value of this property? It seems to be landlocked from West Street. Yesterday they showed an easement to go in there, but is that just is that something that can be defined as like a driveway to get in there? Somebody can pull in the park and walk the dogs? What is the recreational value of this thing that is also part of the CPC mandate?
John Linehan, you can answer that?
Thank you, Juan. Yeah, it certainly has recreational value, and there are two entryways onto the land. But I don't think that that is the primary reason for this, and we certainly don't meet all the criteria on every land purchase. But I do think it'd be a great place to have a picnic. It'd be a great place to take a dog for a walk. But it's not like Glen Echo, where we're really focused on the recreational value of that purchase. So it is accessible, and you can walk the land. It's very open, in fact, but I don't think it's the primary reason to acquire this piece.
Any
I
other
would
comments?
also say, while I have the floor, that I don't know how many of you, and you didn't have a whole lot of time to see it last night. Jim Conlon has done the wetlands delineation after they submitted it and changed it a little bit. And there was plenty of room, especially on several lots. There's one where it's going to be tight, but it looked to me like there was plenty of room to put houses in and meet buffer zone requirements.
Any other comments? I'm going, oh, there's a hand up. Whose hand is up?
Roberta
Roberta
Hardback.
Hardback has her hand up.
Hi, can I speak?
Yes, please, Roberta.
I look at it this way. I look at the real estate market in the town of Stoughton every single night. It's a nice area of town. Everybody knows that. If there's 4 buildable lots for $325,000, that's a steal. That's a steal. They're not going to be putting up, 1,000 square foot little ranches there if they were to build. So I don't believe that there's the buildability is there. I just can't see the town spending money for more open space when the open space trails that we have aren't even maintained. And I just feel that it's a waste of CPC money. Thank you.
Would you say again your conclusion, because you broke up? What did you say?
I just said that I think that it's a waste of money to buy more open space property when we have plenty of open space property and the trails aren't even maintained in them.
All right, thank you for that clarification. I think it's time for a motion. I haven't concluded and I haven't revealed my thoughts, but I'm also someone who would very much like to buy as much land as we can, because once it's gone, it's gone. And this town has a history of open space and should continue that. However, there is a however here, and I have to look John in the eye when I say it, because I love him and I really respect what he's been doing, and I agree with him 99.99% of the time. But I see at least 2 other major potential acquisitions coming at us for land in this town, and both of those that I see are more important, I think, than this one. And while I agree with John Linehan completely that it would be a very good idea to do this, I think the town meeting only has so much appetite for conservation land, and we should be very careful what we bring to town meeting, because there is a lot of feeling that if you take all this land off the tax rolls, somebody has to pay for it, and somebody has to put trails on it, somebody has to maintain it. And so I am, with great and heavy heart, going to vote against this as well. And it is because I think there are bigger fish in the ocean, and we should keep our powder dry, to use 2 terrible metaphors. So that having been said, I would accept a motion to either buy or not to buy the property, or recommend buying or not buying the property. Does anyone like to make that motion? John Linehan.
I would like to make a motion that we purchase this property, and to that end, for the reasons I delineated earlier, which include putting a conservation easement on it and getting a 21E done, we purchase it for, we commit $360,000 to it
And that's from the Conservation Fund,
in cash.
in cash. That's the motion. Is there a second on the motion?
Just to clarify that, this could come from it would have to come from the undesignated fund.
It would, what we buy it under the theory of the Conservation Fund, but it will end up, because the money's gone, coming from the undesignated fund. Any other, is there a second on John's motion?
I'll second it.
Second by Larice.
Yep.
Any discussion on the motion before we call a vote? Then I call a vote. Dwight,
I want to correct the fact that the trails are not kept up on conservation land because I say they are, but I vote no.
Mark,
No.
John Linehan,
Yes.
Larice Rubel,
Yes. Yes.
Joe Scardino,
No.
John Morton, I'm very sad to say votes no. So what is the vote count?
3-2.
4-2, Mr. Chair.
Four against two.
Favor, four against.
The motion did not carry, with great regret.
If I could interrupt you for just 1 second, Mr. Chair, I do want to thank Mr. Linehan for the work that he put in on this. I didn't see eye to eye with him on this project. However, we do see eye to eye on many other things, and I just want to commend the hard work that he's put in here against some pretty strong criticism from my part. So hopefully there's no hard feelings, John, but I had to stand on what I felt was right.
Well, I thank John too. If he were in China, he'd get the Hero of the People award for the work he does for this town. So thank you, John, and I'm so sorry that I voted no, but I think it was the right thing to do. And I do hope your committee is looking at least two other major properties that could be acquired, and would come back to us with the same enthusiasm you came back to with this one.
Well, I
Any other?
I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
Okay, who's talking? John, you want to say something?
No, I was just saying, I know of one, but I don't know of
You
two.
can't.
Work on that one.
Well, there is the one that's the 24 acres. That's right near that one, and then there's the one that's about 12 acres that abuts conservation land off of Sophia Road, with a lot of back taxes on them. And they're both absolutely, they both connect to existing. The one off Sophia Road connects to 3 different conservation parks that we have that are separated by that tract. And the 24 acres abuts existing conservation land and existing well land. What's that?
I said it doesn't just abut it, it fits into it.
Yeah, that's
It's
right.
a very critical piece.
Yes, it certainly does.
And I will vote yes on that one.
And I probably will too. It depends on a lot of things. The world turns. All right, that's it for the continuing business. Now, administrative items. Any other anticipated new business or emergency matters to come before the meeting?
Mr. Chair, we have not talked about the Affordable Housing Trust. However, I would really like for Mr. Crimmins to be here for that discussion. So would it, if it pleases the board, I'd like to move that we skip that item for this evening and wait until Mr. Crimmins can join us and give us some more in-depth information.
That's a good comment, and I think that's appropriate. So with the consent of the committee, we will skip that item and continue to hold it on the agenda. Now, any other matters? I hear sounds, but I don't see anybody's lips moving. All right. Next date, next meeting. Barry Castler, do you have the calendar?
Yeah, the next date would be February 3rd, but obviously this meeting took the place of that. So I guess that puts us to March 3rd for our next monthly meeting.
I would say we may not need a meeting before town meeting unless something new comes up, because at that point the warrant will be closed and there's nothing more we can do for this town meeting. However, if something does come up and somebody wants to start an application, we should have a meeting, and because we'll always publish our meetings. So with the consent of the board, we will, the committee, we will establish the first Wednesday in February as our next meeting. And if there is nothing new, we will not meet.
Mr. Chair, the first Wednesday in March, you mean, I presume?
No, February.
Well, we're not doing
No.
February.
Right.
Well, I guess I mean, that's only, the first meeting in February is only 2 weeks away, so you're right.
1 week away. Yeah, next week. We moved this meeting so that we could get ahead of the warrant for essentially the 3 items we talked about tonight. So
that's correct. All right.
I don't.
What is the date in March?
It's also the 3rd.
Okay. Then the next meeting we would schedule for March 3rd, if there's any reason to schedule it. If there is not, we'll notify everybody that it's canceled. And in that case, we'll have to post a meeting when and if we get some business to attend to, or it becomes later in the summer. So a motion to adjourn is in order.
So made.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Then on the motion to adjourn, Dwight,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Barry, John Linehan,
Yes.
Laurice,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
John Morton votes yes. Thank you all for a very constructive meeting.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.